and I want to let you know we have accepted a heart on your behalf. Not looking at, but accepted, meaning we found a heart. And I grabbed her arm and I said, "You're kidding." But then I mistakenly said, "Where's the heart?" And she said, "It's not been harvested yet." And Susanna, that's when it hit me that this young man, and it was identified as some in the early 20s, still had the heart. And I go, "Oh my God, he has the heart still." And I broke down and I lost it. That's when they can talk about it, but until you get the news and realize someone's dying on your behalf and they're not dead yet, clinically, that's bigger than a Starbucks on a Monday morning.
Hello, Texans. I'm Susanna, and this is the Susanna Gibbs Show. You just heard a clip from Rick Smith with Rock Bottom Outreach. He is approximately 29 days into his life with a brand new heart. He's got a great story, so I hope you enjoy. On this podcast, we focus on the great stories. I've been fortunate enough to be an insurance agent and an actress and producer for over 25 years now. And so that's a lot about what you're going to hear on this podcast with artists, entrepreneurs, idealists, the hows, the whys, choosing to get up again, overcoming hardship, getting a brand new heart. We're a sucker for a good story. And so if you have one that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear from you. Go to gibagencydallas.com and connect with us there. The insurance agency pays the bills for this podcast. So we're going to give you an insurance tip at the end of this to send you out into the world smarter and more knowledgeable. Knowledge is power, right? Again, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time. And now, on with the show. Thank you so much for being on the show with me today. I appreciate having you here, and I'm so excited for everybody to hear your story.
Well, Susanna, I appreciate it. I'm excited to be on here. When I saw I'm not even sure how I saw it, maybe on Facebook or something, and kind of started me thinking like, man, what a great opportunity to share my journey. And insurance had a lot to do with it because it almost cost me my life. And I was like, what a better fit.
It's kind of a stretch sometimes to connect the stories with insurance, but yours is definitely an easy one. So I'm gonna walk us back. I think I'm gonna walk us back to, when did you start Rock Bottom Outreach?
Started Rock Bottom Outreach in 2009. I hit rock bottom in 2008 with a pill addiction that had kind of built over a 10-year period. It's really funny. I went to church on Sunday. Everybody thinks drug addict, long hair and Cheech and Chong, right? But I look just like I do today. So you never would have known. And so had all-American family, was coaching in a small Texas community. Everybody knew us. I'd won 2 state titles as a coach. And it was one of those deals that just over time, I've had multiple surgeries, former bull rider, athlete, and the doctors just started giving me, pain pills. And over time, it turned into, over a 10-year period, it turned into a full-blown addiction. And so it was actually...
Have you followed some of the stuff going on up in Ohio and those, because it was pretty much at that time when people really were prescribing narcotics just like it was candy, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, and so, they didn't blink to give me 260 Norco, which is, Vicodin. I mean, that was normal. You would go in or you'd call it in and they just, they just prescribe it. I mean, and so, unfortunately, I had a couple of doctors. I mean, I'll be honest with you. That's kind of when I knew I was in trouble. Bottom line, I was hooked. I just didn't know what to do.
Right.
It's not like I was going to go and just like, hey, by the way, I think I've turned into an addict, because everybody's got something in their closet. Here I'm a coach. If I admit I'm an addict, I'm going to lose my identity, and my identity was coaching. And so my priorities were backwards. So anyway, because of that rock bottom, I felt the need to bridge the gap for someone like you and I, that all of a sudden you're struggling and you don't know what to do.
Would you
And so that is,
share that
go ahead.
moment? Would you, I know this is kind of a tough moment for you, but would you share that moment when you were like, this is it. This has to stop? Because I know it scared you.
Well, it did. You would have thought it was enough that at the very end of school, May '08, when you get a call from a neighbor and he asks if you're moving, and then you discover your wife has taken your three boys and left. And we've never been a family again of that day. I mean, when she was gone. And so, but because I'd been named the head coach at a local school, I'm like, I'll just fix this myself. But I had a pastor say, Rick, you got to hit rock bottom. And I'm like, what do you think this is? Well, fast forward, I'm trying to stay alive. I'm trying to coach. It's August. I'm now getting drug tested, right? Which is very humbling. And so now I'm getting drug tested. So I test clean. I get to have my boys for the weekend. And so I'm excited to get to have my boys again. Well, we had a scrimmage game in Perrin-Witt, Texas, and I had retaken Xanax. So that was one of my, what you call DOC, drug of choice. And under the influence of that Xanax on a farm road, the boys were in the truck. I crossed the center line on a farm road and I sideswiped an 18-wheeler. That right there was my rock bottom. When
Yeah.
you ain't going to talk your way out of that. And so that cost me the rights to my boys for a year. And I almost killed my children and then also the truck driver. But luckily we walked away by the grace of God. So that was the moment that I knew that it was time to surrender. But it cost me everything, Suzanne. It really did.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard. So you go through, I guess, because you said you hit rock bottom in 2008. You started the ministry in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're working through that. When did they say, "Hey, Rick, you've got a problem with your heart"?
Um, I was having a nervous breakdown over what was going on. And all of a sudden, started having extreme short of breath. I couldn't walk up 3 stairs without sucking air. And that's when I was referred to a cardiologist. I had a PCP. I go in to like, hey, I need some help. What's going on here? And they did a EKG and echo and said, hey, we need to get you to the cardiologist. And that's kind of when they sat me down and said, here's what's going on. You have a fluid around your heart. You've suffered heart failure. It's called stress-induced cardiomyopathy. And they said, you probably won't grow old. It's irreversible.
Hmm.
Here I am, I'm 40 years old and told, you're probably going to die, to let that sink in. And
Did you think you'd hit rock bottom once again?
well, my mindset at the time was maybe I deserve this because of what I've done to my children. Because I still had a lot of stinking thinking,
Yeah.
if you would, that a false belief system, is what it was. But I'll tell you what it was. It was one night, and I heard a song, and the chorus said, "I'll do whatever it takes to turn this around." And I think we need a life motto. I think we all do, something that drives us. Well, I grabbed a piece of paper, man, and I wrote that down, and I was like, I'll do whatever it takes to turn this around. Like, so be it. If I'm going to die, I'm going out swinging, and I'm going to do anything I can to inspire, but I'm taking my life back. And that is when I began to put my feet on the floor every morning to find a reason to get up. But I first had to do it for myself, is what it was. And I began to focus and invest in Rick Smith. And that was through recovery, being discipled, going to church, working out. I was determined for that first year to focus on Rick Smith.
When did you make your bargain with God?
It was actually August 16th, 2008, the night I hit the rock bottom.
Yeah.
I paced the house in the dark through the night. I'll never forget it. And I cried out to God. And I said, if you're there, I got to know it. I have to know it. Because I was what you call a carnal believer, where I kind of sat on the throne and I referred to God occasionally. But only when I wanted him. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, God, help me get this new car or help us win this football game. But I never really had sold out. But that night, I said, if you give me my life back, I'll serve you from this day forward. And I meant it. And he gave me my word. And I think sometimes if you'll listen closely, God gives you a word. And it was steadfast, and means not to the right or the left, but continually move forward. And that has been my motto ever since, is the word steadfast. And that's when I began to battle. But I don't think I negotiated with God. I was making a promise, not like, hey, Suzanne, I promise I'll be on there at 9 a.m. I'm talking, I made a promise to God, like, like God. I mean, how am I going to go back on that, right? Mm-hmm. And knowing what he's done, as hard as the journey has been. But it was August 16th, 2008.
Okay.
That's what it was.
So I know I'm jumping around, but that's okay. So
Go ahead.
I know you get the heart diagnosis. You run through a lot of different medicines. You try a lot of things. When, because you told me this story, when did you meet with the doctor at UT Southwestern that was a big pivotal moment for you?
Well, I actually, it was a couple of times. I had a cardiologist named Daniel Caldwell, which has been phenomenal. And in 2010, they actually put a pacemaker in. And everyone always goes, yeah, my grandma's got one of those, or my grandpa's got one of those. I'm like, I know. I'm aware of that. Like, thanks for rubbing that in, But so I had a pacemaker and a defibrillator. And so actually during football season one time, I wanted what they call VTAC, and it went off during the football game. I thought the ball hit me in the chest out of bounds, doubled me over. Buddy to the right says, what's wrong with you? And I go, oh my gosh, dude, I think my thing went off. And he goes, what does that mean? And I go, we got to get to the ambulance. So by that time we get to the ambulance, I'm back in a normal rhythm. But I end up in the hospital. Dr. Caldwell comes in, but I text him all the way to the hospital, and I said, my device went off. And I kid you not, he wrote back, LOL. This is funny, Hal. How's this funny? Yeah, right. And so at the hospital, he said, I wasn't laughing at you. He goes, that's why you have it. He said, you would have died, right? And so it kind of hits you like, oh my gosh, like I'm really sick, because I had maintained with medication. But let's go to 2018. That's when they're like, I need you to meet with a transplant team. And I go in there, but I do real well on the test. But I asked this question, and this was where I was mentally. What if I just want to ride my tractor, country term, until it runs out of gas? That was my question. Mm-hmm. And so they kind of said, like, not do it. And I said, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And they said, well, it's your life. I mean, it's up to you. And my boys knew the answer to that. They just never wanted to talk about it.
Right.
They felt I was tapping out, is what it was. But that was 2018. And no one ever has realized how sick I've been. I'll be honest, and just because I started listening to what a transplant would involve, and it was $1.5 million. And I'm like, I'm $1.5 million short, man. There's no way I'll ever be able to, out of pocket and all that, pay for that. Like, I'll just ride the tractor. I'm cool with the tractor. It's cheaper, is my mindset. So, yeah, that was 2018. It's the first time I met with them up until this past November.
Is that when the doctor stood up and gave you a hug and said, we're here with you?
Yeah.
You can do it.
You're in trouble when I call them tricks, okay, that if you knew me real well and you knew I had heart failure, but you saw me drink like an energy drink, you'd be like, are you stupid? Why are you doing that? Because you have no energy when you have heart failure. So I had these little tricks that would help me get through. Here I'm still coaching. I'm doing ministry. I'm a hospice chaplain. I'm doing, man, I'm Tigger, man. I'm like getting things done. I'm bouncing around. But all of a sudden, my tricks aren't working no more. I used to, during the cold weather, it would open the bronchioles and I could breathe. But all of a sudden, that's not working. Now I feel like my heart's going to explode. Go to the PCP. She runs the labs. She's like, it's called BMP. Like, your numbers are out or through the roof. You got to go to the cardiologist. So that's when she sent me to Caldwell. And that's when they did an echo. Caldwell comes back and he looks me right in the eye and he said, Rick, I can't do anymore. You're rapidly declining. Medication's not working. He said, it's time to go to do a transplant and get evaluated. And I'm sitting there with my mouth open. And all of a sudden he hugs me, like I stand up, he hugs me, a frontal hug. And he said, I won't let you go through this alone. And boy, it hit me to say, if I don't do this, I'm dying. I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. Like I may not make it another year is what he told me. And that's when he called Dr. Mark Dranzer, and he's the chief of cardiology at UT Southwestern, which is the #1 transplant hospital in the nation. Mm-hmm. And so that they rapidly got me in. And that's when we had that first discussion at UT Southwestern, and they began to kind of tell me what that looked like exactly.
Do they do any coaching for you as far as, because, I know they talk a lot about what medically is going to happen during a transplant, but do they talk much about emotionally how you're going to feel? Like, did you ever feel guilty about getting a heart transplant from somebody else, or whether you deserved it, or?
Yeah, they leave no stone unturned.
Oh, good.
I'm going to be honest with you. Because when they have a transplant team, they got a transplant team. And we're talking psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers. They have mastered the art of this thing, but they can talk all day long, but you're really not prepared for it. You're not really that prepared until all of a sudden reality sets in, till like you got somebody else living inside of you. And they even upon discharge, they send you home with sunscreen, like pill cutters, like they have not missed anything at all. They're very thorough, but they talk about a lot of the questions. What does your support system look like that you're going to need for your recovery? They want 24/7 coverage really for the first 6 weeks. So there's a lot of involvement, but you can only hear, but it's like the roller coaster. You can hear about it, but you got to ride it to experience it. Well, I've now been on the roller coaster. And so
did your previous addiction come up as far as whether you would be eligible for a transplant?
Boy, you are good at this. You're good at this. People are going to think you and I already did this already. You're good at this. Wow, that is a great question. That is what scared me the most. So you're in the hospital for 2 weeks doing this evaluation. Everybody that has an MD, but even, the dentist, the psychologist, sure enough, social worker starts to drill me about that addiction. So, okay, it's 2023, y'all. And we had an incident November 2023 that I had to fire a doctor that could have cost me my sobriety. Just to be honest with you, it's important to have the right doctor. So I had to fire him, get a new PCP that doesn't prescribe anything. Well, I just happened to mention that. All of a sudden, next visit I get is the psychologist, and I get drilled about 2008. What did you take? Did you borrow them? Were you selling them? How many were you taking? Did you have multiple doctors? And when she walked out, Susanna, I'm thinking, I'm not going to get a heart.
There's no way.
That's going to be a deal breaker. No way. That's a deal breaker right there. It is what it is. I was so upset.
Did you have any fears that people would walk up to you randomly and be like, why do you get to jump the line? Why do you get a heart? I can't imagine anybody ever did it, but that it would be something I would worry about, this random conversation that would probably never happen, but.
Right. Yeah.
Or did it happen?
No, it just, it has. Being visible in the community and like you do podcasts and people recognize you in the community. They feel they know you, even though you don't know them, and so they feel freely to come up to you. But I think it's amazing. My brother was on the list, but he died before he got a heart. that doesn't make you feel very good,
Mm.
because you're like that little song, why me, Lord, what did I ever do? That old Chris Christopherson song. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely, because people go on the list and they may wait for years. There's a little boy that's, I know of, 7 years old, and
Mm.
this little boy has opted to just be a little boy, and I know what that means. Because understand and I got the phone call after, and I didn't think I was going to get it. I honestly didn't, because of what you brought up about the addiction. And they kind of said, well, we just want to make sure you have a support system because you're going to have to be on narcotics. And when you discharge home, which I discharged home with no narcotics, by the way, praise God. I went home with Tylenol. That was it.
Good for you.
Anyway, but they called on a Thursday morning after the team met, because your life is in their hands. It's for them to decide. Because if you are a heavy smoker, drinker, vapor, or other type diseases, they will not offer you a heart. They
Got
will
it.
not. You don't have the support system. And so they called and said, congratulations. If you can imagine getting this call, congratulations. We met and we want to offer you a heart.
Offer you a heart. Yeah. So
You're like,
now,
wow.
at this point, you're in the waiting process for a donor, right? So when you go into the hospital, and I don't remember this part of the story. So when you go into the hospital, it's not because the donor's ready, but it's because you have to go into the hospital, right?
Yeah, I was put on what they call Milrinone. Milrinone they call jet fuel for the heart. And it's a PICC line and it's in a backpack, and it goes 24/7. So that's what was keeping me alive. And so, but I could still go in the community or whatever, but you can only live on Milrinone for up to 6 months. But all of a sudden, like, it's pumping my heart for me, which hasn't been happening. And so basically, when they put me on Milrinone, they brought me in on what they call a level 4 when they put me on the list. And so I'm still on the football field coaching with Milrinone on, and all of a sudden, they redo my labs and they see I'm declining. And that's when I got a phone call from Dr. Hendren, who was the lead of my transplant team. And he said, it's time to come into the hospital. And that's when I got called in. And that was, I think about May 13th is when
Mm.
that was. And they brought me in and I was admitted, and he said, hey, you're too sick. We're not sending you home without a heart. So now it's a waiting game, to just like lay in the hospital and wait. But I really began to decline rapidly in the hospital. And all of a sudden things were changing very quickly, and they put me in the ICU.
So you're in the ICU when they say, we've got a donor. What exactly did they say to you?
May 26th, I woke up and I'm on what they call a balloon pump. Balloon pump put me at level 2. Went on the balloon pump May 25th, May 26th. Even they're looking at my numbers back and forth, the Dr. Araj, and he's asking, what do you think? Because if you go on a balloon pump, you can't get out of bed anymore. Like, you
Mm.
can't even bend your leg. And I'm like, what do I think? Like, you're the doctor. But I had to wrap my mind around it. So on the 26th, the next morning, I'm asleep, and Dr. Farr walks in. Never met her, but she kind of looks like you, which is really wild. Never met her. She wakes me. She kneels down, and she said, Mr. Smith, I'm Dr. Farr with the transplant team, and I want to let you know we have accepted a heart on your behalf. Not looking at, but accepted, meaning we found a heart. And I grabbed her arm and I said, you're kidding. But then I mistakenly said, where's the heart? And she said, it's not been harvested yet. And Susanna, that's when it hit me that this young man, and it was identified as some in the early 20s, still had the heart. And I go, oh my God, he has the heart still? And I broke down and I lost it. That's when they can talk about it. But until you get the news and realize someone's dying on your behalf, and they're not dead yet, clinically, that's bigger than a Starbucks on a Monday morning. You're like, wow. But she said, you can't think like that. This is a gift that he's giving you. And boy, I'll never forget that conversation. And I
So
was
then,
transplanted the next day.
so they roll you into surgery. They start doing the procedure, but the heart's not there yet, right?
Yeah, I asked that question. That was my question. Is the heart here? And they said the heart's not here yet. And so then again, and I'm already strapped down like Jesus, right? And I've already made amends. And there's a video. The last thing I said was, either way, I'll see you. Either way, I'll see you soon. And
Man, you
so
better hope
I
there's
was at
not
peace going in.
traffic.
Right on. Right.
Right,
Yeah.
start the
And
surgery
so,
like, sorry, we got stuck on 635, man. It was tough. But I know you said they're in a
well,
Learjet. I'm sure they're helicoptered, but
yeah, Learjet brought it in from 1,000 miles out. That's the search radius, because they don't want it out of the body more than 4 hours. I mean, just and it's called a heart in a box is what it is. And so, last thing I remember before my experience was being strapped down like Jesus, and all of a sudden I was asleep, and then what happened happened.
I want to talk about the donor a little bit, and then I want to talk about your experience, because I don't want to leave the donor just yet. And I think we're probably going to talk a lot more about the experience. My camera's making me crazy. Am I
But I know
moving?
you're there. I can. Yeah.
I
Nah, I
know
can't see you, but
it's killing
yeah,
me, and I hope it's like the way that this thing works is
yeah.
that it records on each place locally, and then it combines it together. So it doesn't necessarily mean that mine's going down, but internet technology, all good
I
things,
got
right?
you. If I can hear you, I know you're there.
Yeah. So the donor, you've had no contact with the donor's family, right? They don't let
That
you. It
that is correct. Yeah. Not. Yeah,
And you don't
I mean,
know anything about race, or his height, but you know
now
nothing about him.
no, nothing at all, other than out of state, young, early 20s, male. He obviously had a cat or a litter box, which I'm having to get infusion treatments for because of something that carries. I can no longer have a cat or a litter box. I can't empty litter boxes, but I'm a country guy, so my cats belong outside if I had a cat. Anyway, that's all I know. Just recently, a week ago, I wrote a letter to the family, but it's up to them if they want to correspond with me or not. But Father's Day was hard for me because I realized a father had lost a son, and he was on life support, and so, but he lives in me, and yeah, he
Yeah,
lives in
he
me.
lives in you.
Yeah,
So let's talk about. I want to talk about your experience while, I don't know. I guess you were under
yeah,
when you died. When
yeah.
so
90
let
minutes, no heartbeat.
90 minutes, no heartbeat. Are you technically? Do they say you're dead at that point or no?
Yeah, you have no heartbeat. The only reason you're functioning is they got you on a heart-lung bypass machine, which keeps your brain going and everything else, but your heart's not working any longer. Isn't that amazing?
It is
And so
amazing.
90 minutes, because I asked, like, how long was I without a heartbeat? And they said, let me look at my note. About 90 minutes. Like, you mean like an hour and a half? Like a movie? Like during the whole movie, I was dead. That type deal, like, wow. But, a lot of people said, I can see you don't even look the same, that you saw something. And I did. And it's taken a long while to process that because I know what I saw, and I tried to Google it to think I'm not crazy. Like, well, let me see if it's on Google, right? You can Google anything, right? But when you start Googling bright light and an image in it that's faceless, doesn't exist in the imagination of man. It's not on Google anywhere. But it's plain as day, and it was there plain as day, and it sat to the right of me, and it just watched over me, Susanna. Like, it was an angelic figure, and all they did was just stand guard over me. And the Bible says in Psalms 91:11, I give command and charge over my angels to stand watch over you. And that's exactly what it did. And I say it. because it was sexless, like there was no face. And so at night when I would see it again, I would break down emotionally, but I wasn't scared. It just was the most overwhelming, like the love you have for your child when you first hold your child. Like, I've never loved something so much in my life. I've never felt so loved so much in my life. That's
How?
exactly what happened.
I didn't remember that part. I know I've been excited to talk about the angel this whole time because I think it's fascinating. But I didn't remember that you talked about how often did you feel like your angel was with you? Aside from
Every
all the
night, like
time, but literally like see this figure.
usually at night,
Yeah.
in the stillness of the night, um, when everyone was gone. I mean, I had a ton of visitors, like Jim Sundberg from the Texas Rangers, Roger Hines in New York Knicks. I mean, like, they'd never seen so much foot traffic. And the reason is everyone wanted to hear about the experience. But it was at night when no one's there and in the stillness of the night, and I would close my eyes and I could see it again. And it wouldn't go away. But it was the greatest sense of peace. But on the flip side, this is really funny. And you had to see it. I have a picture of it somewhere. There's a machine in that hospital room, and it has two green lights on it, but it would reflect on the TV, and it looked like two evil eyeballs. And it did. And I would have to call the nurse. I kid you not. I call the nurse and say, y'all have to cover that up. Like, ain't no evil in this room. Like, but I would see the angel. Like, it was really like good versus evil. It would have freaked you out. It was really like two eyeballs watching you sleep.
Do you feel like the angel was like, was there a moment when you were like, I'm going to stay, or the angel was ready to take you? Did you have any of that
no,
moment?
I didn't feel the angel was there to take me. I think the angel was just standing guard, watching over me, to guard me in all my ways, to make sure that I was okay, watching over the surgeons. It is exactly, and I, again, I kind of talked about that on the TikTok video this morning of the why. Why would God do something like that? Why would he allow that? Why me? Lord, I'm a coach from Weatherford, Texas. Why would you pick me to have an angelic experience? And
Maybe the angels are with all of us. You just happen to see yours.
I think it's to give them a message of hope.
Yeah.
I think to share with people, because in the book of John, the disciples see a blind guy and they're like, my gosh, what did that dude do? That he's blind. And he said he didn't do anything. It's to show my greatness and my glory. And that's when he put mud on his hands, and all of a sudden the guy could see. And the reason he did it is so he would go tell people. So God, go ahead.
Oh, you can finish your thought.
No, I mean, and again, a lot of us have had experiences, and we just don't talk about it.
No, nobody wants to talk about it because nobody wants to be judged for potentially believing in angels. Do people talk to you more about what they believe now that they feel like, oh, he's not going to judge me for what I think? Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of went public. Had a reporter ask me, what, like, did you see anything? And I, for the first time publicly, I said, yeah. So I went live and on TikTok and social media, and all of a sudden I've been blown up with messages of people sharing their experience. And my question, why you've never told anyone? They're like, people think I'm crazy.
People think I'm crazy.
But I'm bold enough. Yeah, I'm bold enough to, like, I realize why God did it.
Did you believe in angels before?
Yeah, because of 2008. And I had an experience in 2008.
Oh, that's right.
But at the time I wasn't. Yeah. And I thought, I didn't tell anybody because they'd think I was crazy, honestly. But I felt the touch, the physical touch of somebody, in 2008. And it's all come full circle now, to be like, Rick, I never left you. I've been with you every step of the way. I mean, just, it's funny. Some people think you get sick because of karma or something, like something bad you did. A lot of times just because it's part of the journey, and obviously, God can do. But yeah, just, I've studied a lot on angels. I have a biblical studies background and a degree. And David Jeremiah, big in ministry, does a phenomenal study on angels. And but I've always seen the Google pictures of what people create. But Mercy Me has that song, I Can Only Imagine, talking about going to heaven. And all I can tell you, Suzanne, is you can only imagine.
So, did you have any other experiences with angels before this?
Wow, that's a great question. We got to go back to 2008. So the night I hit rock bottom and I'm pacing the floors, and after I'd cried out to God, I finally dozed off in the wee hours of the morning. Got very little sleep, but all of a sudden, Susan, I had this dream, and I could see the boy's mom to the right of me. And she had a perfect face, just like you do. And she's smiling at me, but she's not saying anything. But the way she's smiling at me, it was like, it's going to be okay, Ray. And then I feel her take me by the right hand. Well, when I felt the touch of whatever it was, it woke me up. So I woke up distraught and I'm crying, but I don't tell nobody, right? Like, what are you going to tell someone? Like, somebody grabbed my hand in a dream. They're like, man, you're on those drugs still. And so I'm going back to coaching. This happened
Or there's
later.
There's a biblical verse for that, right?
Right. In Isaiah, he says that I will take you by the right hand and protect you. But at the time, that hadn't hit me until I'm coaching at Gainesville Youth Prison, and I'm also a correction officer, but I have a kid on a suicide watch, and I'm reading 90 Minutes in Heaven. Oh my gosh, 90 minutes, Suzanne, think of that. I had no heartbeat for 90 minutes.
There's patterns in numbers.
Wow, there is. That's crazy. Anyway, in the story of Dan Piper that's in a car accident, goes to heaven for 90 minutes. God, that just hit me like that. Wow. Like, you are so good at this. And in the book, he just told his testimony, and his buddy's wife said, hey, Dan, your testimony's a little inaccurate. And he goes, well, no, it's not. It's my testimony. He said, yeah, you said my husband grabbed you by the right hand while you were in the car accident. He goes, yeah, he did. And he goes, no, he didn't, Dan. He couldn't reach your hand. And he goes, no, like he did. And then he stopped. He's like, oh my God, somebody held me by the right hand. Mm-hmm. And then they referred to Isaiah, and I'm like, and it hit me like, oh my God, that's what happened to me. But I still never talked about it, but I knew the light came on. And so fast forward to now. And so I realized that. And then,
do you think that the angel looked like your wife because that's how you could accept it? Your ex-wife?
Yeah, because I think where I was at, especially in my walk, and like, you picture an angel looking like a cherub, right? But that would have freaked me out. Like, to see somebody I don't know laying next to me, that wouldn't have been nearly as peaceful. But the thing that gave me peace at the time was the boy's mom. And so, the movie The Shack, something like that happened. Have you ever seen that? But I think that the image God sent was in the form of the boy's mom, because that's the thing that gave me peace and was calming to me at the time. And yeah, it's exactly what you said. I mean, you're point on. So that's my second angelic experience until now. But
I have one more question, and then I promise I'll let you go.
Sure. No, it's okay.
When you were the hospice chaplain, did you have many conversations with your patients then about what they might see or what they might experience, or did they talk to you about that?
Yeah, that's another great question. Happen all the time. These people are terminal, right? So I get people a lot older, that when they'd go what we call critical care, meaning comfort care, to say it's a matter of days. But you'd have someone that maybe 95 years old to say, I know where I'm going, but I'm a little scared, which is true. To say you all day long, like, man, you're going to go to heaven, like, great. But when you're laying at death's door, it's a whole different experience. It's a whole different part of the journey to say, this is really happening. This is reality. I had those conversations all the time. Or they would hear somebody, had a lady that I loved always talking to, because every night she could feel the presence of her husband. She could actually smell his cigar smoke. And of course, the sons and them are thinking, like, maybe mom's losing her mind. But I told her, I said, I don't believe that at all. I said, a lot of times that they will, I think God allows a presence of a loved one, to come back to you. And I had those conversations all the time. But at least they were honest to say, I know where I'm going, but I'm scared a little bit. Yeah. But we all the time can sing the little song in the diddly, that we know where we're going and praise God and all that until it's time. And I can honestly say I was at complete peace with that. I really was. And that's when to say, Lord, either way, I'll see you soon. And I meant that because I was ready. Like I said, I was ready. But yeah, that was a great question.
The two most normal and awesome things, birth and death.
Yeah, the company I worked for was Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end.
Beginning and the end. My kiddos really love the Angel of God prayer. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here. Although since you've studied in angels, and I've seen this debate online, is there not a possibility that somewhere in the translation it got shifted, that Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits thee here? God's love has sent you, the angel, to be with me. Because everywhere I see it, it's commits me here, commits me here, commits me here on this place. But it's about the angel.
It is, yeah. It is, yeah. I mean, it is about the angel. I mean, it is, and people say, like, can they take on a life form? Yeah, to an extent, that they can. My understanding through study, and what I experienced of that it can take a form of anything. That it wants to, I mean, but God is still in command of the angels. And, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'll never tell someone you're wrong. My question would be, what do you believe? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? My favorite saying is you do you, boo. You know what I mean? Because you do you, boo, man, because God gives us free will, and I can read a scripture and it means something to me, but different to you. And so my deal is that every relationship looks different. And so, my question, like, do you believe there's a God? Like, I do, but what do you believe? What do you believe? That's the question. What do you believe about angels? I can tell you what I've studied and what I know, but what do you believe? Because in that time, yeah, I mean, when the time comes, to say, do you believe? It's like, Suzanne, I can't do this for you. It's what do you believe? Free will. God gives us free will. That's when they're like, why does God allow blah, 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 blah? Well, because he didn't make us like robots.
I love that so much. I'd talk about religion all day with somebody who's open to multiple beliefs and options, because it is so fascinating to me. Much better than politics all day long. Although I know polite conversation isn't religion and politics, but spirituality, it's not, and it's so much more fun to talk about.
Well, and here's what God has shown me, and through this whole thing, and obviously I've had a heart transplant, but from the biblical standpoint, and not getting the scripture, but there are over 350 scriptures pertaining to the heart. But what I've noticed is, my heart has changed in a lot of ways during my journey, that I spend more time with the people I love, yada, yada. But Suzanne, America needs a heart transplant. And my point is this, is that either you've had a spiritual heart transplant, that God has changed your heart, you're in the process of one, meaning you're searching and you're growing, or you never had one. Because now, with what's going on in America, we can't dictate what people are doing, but we can sure control the way we respond to them. And that's where we get in trouble of these debates and me telling you, well, Suzanne, you're wrong. You're wrong, and you're going to go to hell. man, there ain't nothing Christ-like about that. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'll sit all day long and listen to your belief system. I'm like, what do you believe? And I'm going to respect that. It's the all I can control is the manner that I love you and the way I respond to you.
Well, Rick,
But America needs a heart transplant.
they do. Well, I'm so thankful you reached out to me. I've loved hearing your story. You've made a liar out of me though, because I told you it would only be 30 minutes, and I just didn't. I wanted to hear more, and
No, I could
how
I could go all day long. Yeah.
sorry. I'm like, your story is a little emotional. I'm like, my nose is kind of running. I apologize. So
No,
it's very powerful.
I had to meet with somebody yesterday, kind of a follow-up appointment, and they just cried the entire time. And I have a dog named Bear, and Bear's a service dog that because of my sickness, which I'm not sick anymore, by the way. I don't have heart failure anymore. I can get life insurance now, Susanna. Do you sell life insurance? Because nobody would touch me before. They were like, man, there ain't no way we're giving this dude a policy. But I can get one now. Anyway, but she cried the whole time, and Bear's looking at her like, are you okay?
Oh,
Yeah,
pumpkin.
crazy. Yeah, my lack of insurance almost killed me, by the way. So luckily
Yeah.
I got the right insurance. So that's why it's important to call Susanna and get the
Oh,
right insurance plan.
right. Thank you, sir. How can people find you if they wanna reach out to you?
Well, on Facebook, it's Rick Smith out of Weatherford, Texas. And you can find me through Rock Bottom Outreach, which is also on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Um, it's funny being on TikTok. Never thought I'd be on TikTok.
Me
Anyway,
either,
and
buddy.
our website is, I know, right? Yeah, the
Yep.
kids talked us into it. They're like, Coach, get on TikTok. We have like 37,000 followers, so that's pretty good. But they can go to our website, www.rockbottomoutreach.org. But man, I love to hear from people, love to talk with them. And obviously, we'll love to come and speak. We have a speaking team, but I want to use this as a platform to share a message of hope. I mean, this is not about Rick Smith. This is about what God has done and doing a message of hope and trying to change some hearts maybe. And I know we've touched a lot through the journey, but like you said, to have open conversations and respect each other more than we have previously. I think that's what's important. But anyway, man, they can find me easily. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
man, if you ever want to do a follow-up, I mean, I'd love to come back.
We will, for sure.
Awesome.
Before we move on to our insurance tip, talking with Rick is a ton of fun because he is such a great storyteller, and he's just a nice man, which makes it so fun to hear his stories. And it was fun to talk about with other people about whether they believe in angels and how often people will say, oh, I don't know, just because they don't want to be judged about it. It's pretty interesting. It's a real easy segue into our insurance tip. In fact, when Rick contacted me, he said, Susanna, everybody needs good insurance. He initially had a policy that had a $250,000 limit on heart transplants, which is not near enough. His bills went over 1.5 million. Now, once upon a time, all Affordable Care Act plans were the same. But then one of the presidential administrations loosened the restrictions. And so now we have both ACA plans and non-ACA plans. And some of these association plans are great. And they provide a really kind of alternative place to buy health insurance. And some of them have weirdo sublimits like the $250,000 on heart attacks, cancers. So you got to be really good about reading the fine print and making sure that you're getting a policy that's going to give you the coverage you need. Everybody's healthy until one day they're not. And that's what health insurance is for. Please connect with us at giveagencydallas.com. Thank you again for being here, and we'll see you again next week.